The reboot release of SimCity in 2013 was one of the most famously bungled launches at the time, as of course, not only did it seem to be lacking a lot of features, it had always online components which pretty much crippled the game and caused a huge amount of problems for many people, and of course meant that a lot of people who had paid good money for this game just couldn't play it, and constant disconnections and all that. The story of SimCity is well known at this point, but now, 3 years after that whole debacle, the SimCity creative director Ocean Quigley spoke to Game Informer, can I just say, coolest name ever, and he basically said that he's still proud of the game itself, even if EA's decision to require an always online connection ruined everything. And basically, Ocean discussed a few things as to how SimCity came about and what went so horribly wrong to result in one of the most famously horrible launches of the last few years. Now basically, SimCity came out of Maxis' desire to make a SimCity game in full 3D, basically believing, hey, the technology has finally gotten to the point where we can do this, we can give SimCity what it's always kind of deserved, the graphics or other options were kind of lacking before, so let's give it a true swan song, shall we? But EA greenlit the project with the famous caveat, it had to be always online, because EA believed that the gaming industry was heading in that direction, and apparently microtransactions were part of EA's reasoning. And Ocean said, quote, EA wanted to make it more of a platform, an ongoing platform that they sort of build and develop on. And so that mandated, kind of, the server and online stuff, which in respect, I mean obviously, was the fatal flaw in it. So basically that left Maxis trying to figure out how to turn this sort of very ball and chain like requirement into a feature that would actually deliver something useful to the players. Obviously, saying this single player experience requires an always online connection is a pretty hard sell. But if you can say, hey, but you get this as a feature because of it, then obviously it helps it become a little less of a bitter pill to swallow. Now, some of the networking elements allowed for things like leaderboards and design space possibilities, and obviously players being able to connect the systems with their friends and blah 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 blah. But according to Ocean, he did wish that those features had been optional, considering how famously awful the launch of SimCity actually was. And he said, quote, the tech got ahead of itself, and went on to describe a server meltdown when millions of players attempted to play at once. And he said, quote, we didn't have the back-end infrastructure to actually pull that off, obviously. The back end of it all, sort of collapsing in flaming server rooms, was, well, it feels like a bit like somebody on a sinking ship. You've done a really nice job in your part of it, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you've made all these beautiful things, because the rest of the ship is exploding. Now, this had more effects than just millions of people being unable to play the game that they had paid lots of money for, and obviously the online connections causing all sorts of problems outside of that. The failed launch and obviously Maxis' attempts to fix the server issues actually stopped them from improving or expanding upon the game, because they were so busy trying to fix the servers and actually trying to make it so people could play the game. Now, obviously, one of the major criticisms outside of the online element was the limitations in city size, which was rather small in comparison to previous games. Now, Quigley said that the Maxis actually had big ideas for those land plots, but obviously they weren't able to do that because they were too busy trying to put out the fires that had been caused by the always online requirement. Now obviously, over a year later, EA did add an offline mode to the game, and of course a modder added it way before that, but by that point the damage had been done, and of course the whole thing ended with the SimCity developer being shut down by EA. So essentially, Maxis were given this caveat by EA, who seemed to think that always online was the future for some reason. It ended in the game being lambasted in various ways, and of course the company ended up being shut down. So it's just a sad story that started with this one thing of, hey, it has to have always online, and then just kind of rapidly escalated from there until the sad situation that we now have. Of course, the game's in a much better state now, but it will never really be what it could have been, because Maxis is no more, and they didn't really ever expand on it the way they wanted to, because they were too busy putting out fires, and by the time that the offline mode was added in, well, by that point they probably lost a significant portion of their player base. So, a rather sad tale, to be sure, but one that hopefully the industry as a whole, and if we're really, really lucky, EA themselves will learn from. But We'll see. Thanks very much for listening and watching. Do remember to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It is very appreciated. It goes a long way. And thank you again for watching. Bye.